Welcome back to Bills in Business. I'm your host, Laura Davis, the co-founder of USLege. And when I was working the Texas Senate, I was working on tech policy, and energy was always in the background. But with AI infrastructure accelerating faster than anyone has predicted, it is not in the background anymore. It is the issue. So my guest today has been at that intersection for over 2 decades. Jason Ryan is the EVP of Regulatory Services and Government Affairs at CenterPoint Energy, the company keeping the lights on for nearly 3 million Texans. He's testified in front of every committee that matters in Texas energy, including the ones that were not particularly happy to see him. He's a former Navy intelligence officer, former law firm founder, and he's the person that walked back in the Capitol after Hurricane Beryl. Enjoy my conversation with Jason. So, Thank you so much for coming on. I did an intro for you already, but do you mind sharing a little bit more about what you're doing right now? And we'll go into some of your background too. It's really impressive.
Yeah, so I've been at CenterPoint Energy now for a little over 16 years, so my career can officially drive a car. And I now lead some of our corporate functions. I grew up on the legal side of the business, including as general counsel before starting to lead part of the business. And so it's an exciting time to be in our industry, and can't wait to see what we can accomplish for our customers that we're working hard every day to move at their pace instead of our pace. So it's been a little bit of a cultural shift at our company to make sure that we're able to improve our processes, improve our focus on the customer to achieve what they want on the timeline that they want it.
So you went from a general counsel role then into the GR side, more public facing.
That's right.
What made you choose to do that?
It was kind of a logical progression of the work that we were doing on the government affairs side.
Okay.
I had always had a role, whether it was to review legislation or help to draft amendments that we would want to talk to people about. And so I was always government affairs adjacent, I would say, when I was serving as just the company's lawyer. But I had a boss at the time. She said to me, she wants her lawyers to be leaders at the company, not just lawyers. So leaders who happen to be lawyers was kind of her approach to mentoring me and the others in the law department at the time. So it really encouraged me to go and build something if you want to be more than just a lawyer at this company. Because if you are a leader, then go lead a function that's not purely legal, right? So this was adjacent enough to where it was comfortable for me to go and do that. And she gave me that opportunity, and I did it.
And that's awesome.
Yeah.
And you had all that prep from being a Navy intelligence officer.
Sure.
So did that kind of get your political wheels turning when you started in that position?
I think all of the experiences that I've been fortunate to have built on what I needed for the next skill set, if that makes it right. So, and part of, I think, being a good government affairs professional is understanding what you're talking about. But more than that, understanding the why behind the what. So not just that we favor this particular policy, but why. And as you know, so much of what happens at the State House is about compromise and reaching rational conclusions, not just having pure winners and losers on one side of the issue. If the more you can understand the why behind the what, why is that a good policy? What are you actually trying to accomplish? And the more you have that understanding, the more I think you can maneuver through the process to achieve outcomes that are fair to everybody. And the Navy intel work is similar, right? Like you might see imagery on the what that was being built, but why is it being built? How is it being built? Gives you more insight to the what, right? If the what is, I see a building, but if I go back and see how it was constructed, I can then start to assess why do they have that building? And then I understand what goes on in that building. and I can decide if it's something that's super interesting or something that I just move on to something else. So the more you can unpackage the why behind the what, really understand the issues that our elected officials have to struggle with and find compromise on, I think the more you can be an effective government affairs professional.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like you have a lot of good ways to maybe explain things in layman's terms to folks, which I think is so good. You're an educator on a lot of these issues, and the big issue of the time that a lot of the people on the other end of this or listening right now want to know about is data centers and energy and grid reliability, and can we keep up with the demand? And as we were just talking about, everyone wants this demand. We are constantly progressing in tech, and we are using the tech. Everybody around us is pretty much, most of us are using it. So Houston's been, connecting a lot of industrial loads to the grid for a very long time. So now everyone's kind of scrambling to catch up. So what do you know that they're now just figuring out?
So we have been connecting large customers to the grid since before it was cool to talk about it.
Yeah.
And we've got the largest petrochemical complex on the planet. They're one of the largest ports in the country, the largest medical center in the world. But increasingly, we are seeing even larger customers than we have historically connected to the grid, right? So the size and the pace is new. But that just means that we take what we've learned over the past 100 years of connecting large customers to the grid, and we just have to get much better at it, right? So the engineering around connecting large customers to the grid is much different than connecting your typical customer, right? Understanding their needs and being able to explain to them what we need in order to connect them, that's a skill set that we have. Moving at their pace is a skill set that we have to work on. But we at least are not the Department of No when it comes to what these customers want or forcing them to do it our way. We have learned over the many decades of connecting these large customers that you have to adapt to what they need. And increasingly, that means adapting to their timeline. So having us be able to work through our processes faster is something that we're working on. But we've got a really good foundation given that we've been connecting large customers for a long time.
How do you increase the speed? I know everybody always wants to go faster, and how does that work?
Part of it's changing the mindset of our employees to really meet this moment where we are seeing, for the first time since really the electric boom years post World War II, we are seeing a dramatic demand for what only we can deliver.
Sure.
And so having our customers understand that, having folks look at end-to-end processes, not just in your silo that you might be an engineer, or you might be procurement, or you might be legal, or you might be operations that actually has to build something. Historically, we've all worked in our silos, depending on which of those people I am. And we've optimized our silos, right? I'm really good at engineering. And then I throw it over the fence to procurement to go buy the stuff for it. And they're really good within procurement. And then they have legal review all the contracts, and legal's really good at that. But if you look end to end at the process, while we have optimized each individual piece, the process is a mess end to end, right?
Sure.
And it's not going to move quick enough to rise to this moment to meet our customers' expectations as it relates to speed. So we have to start looking at end-to-end processes and make sure that we can make the whole process as efficient as possible, not just each individual piece, where people are making decisions that optimize their silo that might actually be causing problems in the other silo. But since we're not talking to each other and we're not talking end-to-end process, we don't know that. And historically, when the pace has been slower, the size of the customer has still been large, but the pace has been slower. That inefficient end-to-end process is not as noticeable. as it is now when the pace has increased and
Sure.
you've really got to figure out where can I take time out of it. So having our employees work as a team, not a golf team where everybody's individual contributions are really what matters, but more like a basketball team or a football team where yes, you can have individual stars, but the whole team suffers if one player is not pulling their weight, right? So how do you act as that kind of a team is really the cultural shift that we've been making.
I imagine that's really challenging just with a large corporation. I'm in a startup and we have 20 people, and that's it's a lot less challenging to make sure everybody's on the same page, and everybody, even though they're in their departments, they know the overall mission and goal and why we're doing it and really involved in it. So kind of making it more like a startup in some ways. Collaboration, but to meet the speed of the startups that are coming here and these tech companies. So
that's right. And we've got 9,000 men and women that work really hard every day that want to do a good job for our customers. Part of it, I'll go back to the why behind the what. If you explain why it is that we need to change this process, right? Our employees will surprise us every day at how accountable they will be when they understand why something needs to change, as opposed to it's just an edict from leadership that we're changing this.
Right.
So really explaining that why behind it gets buy-in super quick. And then all of a sudden, we've got a highly accountable workforce that will do things that will amaze us every day. If you can just motivate them by explaining the why behind the what, that is how we've been able to really rise to this occasion.
That's a very exciting time.
Yeah,
we're using AI for a lot of that in our efficiency too, because it can have context of every single thing.
100%.
Every system you use, it has a full picture, so it's always going to be better output when it has more context.
That's right.
So something that came up a lot in the hearing last week is data centers need 24 hours, reliability. They can't have 1 second the grid goes down, right? So how can we produce something that is perfect, not near perfect? What needs to actually change at the legislative level or at the state level as an infrastructure? What really needs to change to make sure that reliability is 100%?
Yeah. So, and by the way, that's kind of how we all feel these days in terms of our expectations from our utilities, right? Yeah. One single outage is too many. And I think the legislature has done a lot recently to address the entire spectrum of the industry, right? From the generation to the poles and wires to the retail relationship with the customer, to improve on that. Not only on blue sky days like it kind of is today here in Austin, but when resilience challenges face us, whether it's high water, high wind, extreme heat, extreme cold, right? Those will always be a challenge to the power system. But the legislature has given us tools. The Public Utility Commission has approved the use of those tools now for every utility to go and get better outcomes during those resilience events, so that it's not just on blue sky days that we've made improvements, but it's taking that punch from Mother Nature and getting back up quicker. And so I think a lot has been done. And we've got a lot of generation on the grid. It's amazing when you, again, take the tails of the probability curve, and we'll talk about that in a second, right? But on a normal day, this market has given us a tremendous amount of excess generation. So when customers come on board, large customers, small, you and me at our house, more people buying houses, building houses, like the grid is able from a generation capacity perspective to accommodate that. Our poles and wires are sufficient to accommodate that. You've got retailers that are here to accommodate that. So what we really have to look at are those tails of the probability curve again, right? Some of them extreme weather driven. And I think as it relates to data centers in particular, they are implementing technology to help manage their fleet of data centers around the country and around the world to help address issues that come up in those tails of the probability curve. And so I think as we see things actually play out, we've got good fundamentals here in the Texas market that puts us at the front of the line when one of these large customers is looking for where in the world do they want to come. And I think the legislature and the Public Utility Commission, ERCOT, like they can all take a lot of credit for doing that through the policies that we already have today.
Absolutely. And do you think that the biannual legislature here is enough to keep up with the advancements in tech and the changes and the demand? Having an every 2-year legislature is not meeting that frequently when you think about it. So how is that affecting what you do in the work?
Yeah, so technology obviously moves at a quicker pace than every couple of years. But I actually think that when it comes to setting policy, there is a benefit from making a decision and then seeing how that decision meets the real world. Versus if you're constantly making changes in policy, that's hard for any business to keep up with and to plan around and to understand. And so I don't think the frequency of the or the cadence of the legislative session needs to change. I do think it's very helpful when items are brought to their attention, though, to address that they boldly address very difficult issues, because where the cadence will start to be a problem is when we don't make decisions on a very important issue, and now we're going to wait 2 more years with no decision, right? But as long as we have leaders that are making bold decisions on complicated topics, and then give it time to see how it meets real world, I think every 2 years is fine.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Especially for you, because every legislator wants data centers for the most part, jobs, investment. We want Texas to win, the legislators here, but then it comes with some consequences. So do you want to share more about just some of those that you've seen and that you're facing now? Yeah.
So I think I'll start out by maybe pointing out the obvious, that data centers have a lot of controversy around them, in part because I don't know that everybody understands what they do to enable our everyday lives.
Tell us.
So I Ubered here to the studio. Uber doesn't live on my phone, right? It doesn't connect my phone with a driver. It uses a data center, right, to determine who is closest to me. And then they get a ping on whether to accept me. That doesn't live on their phone either, right? So I used a data center to come over here. I used a data center to check my email. I used a data center in some apps this morning. I used a data center when I Googled something. Right. And even with Google these days, you get often an AI answer first before it links you to a bunch of stuff. And AI has instantaneously digested the most popular results of my search and summarized that for me. Right? I use AI when I'm streaming a movie on the weekends. And these are all things that enable our everyday lives. They're conveniences, right, that we're demanding and increasingly demanding. But think about it in the business context, where I think we'll probably use AI to cure diseases, to cure cancer, right? They can take these massive data sets, ingest them, summarize them, spot patterns. I don't think any of that good stuff can come without people, but AI is going to enable people to do awesome things, right? And so we want that. We want the everyday conveniences. We want the awesome things that AI will do that we're not even thinking about every day. So when we talk about data centers, they've been around forever. They haven't been this big and they haven't come at this pace. They've been around forever because we've been emailing for a long time. We've been using apps for a long time, right? So none of that has changed. I just feel like it's this boogeyman until you step back and think about what it is actually doing in our everyday lives. And then hopefully, again, it kind of gets back to the why behind the what. It's not a building, right? It is a building, right? But it's not just a building that has computer servers in it that's sucking up a lot of electrons. Like, that's not all it is. If you think about why does it exist? In part, it exists because we demand it. And in part, it exists because it's going to do really good things for humanity going forward. So I think if we think about data centers in that way, more folks can get on board with why it is we want to build this infrastructure, why it is that we're supportive of these things. And I think until we start breaking it down to some of the fundamentals of how we literally use it, I bet an average person uses AI and data centers 1,000 times a day, and we just don't even think about it.
That's a great way to put it, because some people who maybe aren't as familiar with AI, I talk to people all the time, and mostly in the government affairs space. I would say about 70% of them are using AI in some capacity. And I'm teaching them how to use it more. But no, it's a very exciting time, but it needs to keep up with demand, because as people start to realize what they can actually do to automate a lot of things, you can work 10, 15 times as fast.
Sure.
There's going to be more demand.
Sure.
More.
And you can move on to higher value tasks, right? So, hear a lot about people concerned about AI taking the place of jobs. And I think AI will transform a lot of jobs. Take lawyers as an example, right? Yeah. You can now, we could draft all kinds of briefs during the time that we're sitting here talking on this podcast that would have taken months historically to do. Now, I don't know how right it would be, right? Because you do still have to check what AI gives you.
Yes.
But some of the fundamentals of how to frame an argument, that oftentimes we might get an epiphany when we're on a morning run, and I'm going to frame it up this way. AI can help. It doesn't remove me from that task of picking the best way to frame it. But the fact that I could say, no, I don't like that way that you framed that argument. Give me another way to think about it. And then I can move on to the more value-driven work of actually supporting my argument in that frame, right? And so I think that it will transform jobs. It won't replace us in our jobs. It may free us up to do more work that actually improves the product. And then in some places, it just changes the type of job that's needed. So.
Absolutely. It's just changing. I think every single industry is getting impacted by it in an exciting way. If I can now do 10, 15 times the amount of work, I think that's going to be the expectation now for every industry to learn how to use it. But automation too, those mundane tasks that are formatting, very simple things that maybe need structure, but also point out ideas that you never would have known before from having context of everything going on in your business or whatever that may be. I think this is an AI gold rush, and people shouldn't be as scared. They should take it and really get excited about how they can utilize it for all those amazing opportunities for business and just their career in general. So
we use AI increasingly in our call center these days to do simple transactions. So that it frees up our call center agents to deal with the more complicated issues that our customers are calling in on. So if you're just calling to start or stop your utility service, very routine, simple, right? We get hundreds of thousands of those calls a year. That before this year required an agent to take your information and put all that in the system.
Right.
Now that is automated, unless it becomes super complex and then it transfers over to a live agent. We don't employ fewer agents. as a result of that, the wait time to talk to an agent about your very complex issue has gotten shorter.
Exactly.
Right? So again, taking those routine items, automating them, reducing human struggle on both sides, our side and the customer side, quicker experience. That is oftentimes what we're looking for these days. We're looking for, I just want to do whatever it is that I'm trying to do. I want it quick. I want it done right. And AI can help do that through automation of very simple tasks. And then again, it frees us up to address the more complicated issues quicker. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, really fun use case I've recently had is we've started using a lot of different AI software tools, and we have the same tech stack among the company. So all my meetings with customers or prospective customers, they're transcribed. And when there's a request for something like a product feature, in the past, I would have had to wait till the end of the day, spend an hour or two going through all my notes, send that into our engineering team to build a ticket, and then they have to figure out where in priority should this go. Well, now it's completely transcribed.
That's right.
The follow-up is completely automated. The tickets are immediately built, go into the engineering team to automatically then rank them on who requested, how many times it's been requested, and boom, now we know our product roadmap of what should be built next because of 5 customers requested the same thing. 5 people. It's amazing. And it's automated instead of us having to have this really deep conversation or here's what they want. Now we have quotes from people saying, this is why it's so valuable to me. So it's educating our engineering team on what the sales team knows from talking to people. It's amazing. So there's just so many really cool ways to connect. I feel a lot more connected now to our engineering team because of that. And we all understand we have the same context now.
Sure.
It's so cool.
I use it increasingly for meetings in advance of the meeting. So we use Copilot at our shop. And on any calendar entry I've got for a meeting, I've got a button that I can push and it will give me the context for the meeting, anything that I've gotten by email in advance of the meeting, kind of what the meeting is about, how I might need to prep for the meeting based on the attendees. And again, none of that's happening on my phone. I'm using my phone to do that, right? But it's happening in a data center. And it makes us more efficient as leaders in our businesses. And just talking about the notes that you're mentioning getting after a meeting where it talks about who has tasks that they committed to doing in the meeting. Like,
that's so great.
My goodness, if how good would meetings be if it was super clear after every meeting who had it to do and what their timeline is to do it? It's going to help us have greater discipline to actually accomplish the things that we sit and meet about, as opposed to just going to a meeting and then not thinking about it again until we have the next meeting, and then we didn't do the things that we were supposed to do because we didn't write it down, right? So
and when you make a commitment, you want to follow through on that. But you may have made 5 commitments and you remember 4.
So now AI, in advance of the next meeting, when I click on that button again, it's going to say you had 5 things to do. Coming out of the last meeting, you better do it because you're updating tomorrow.
It's pretty amazing.
So,
Well, the advent of MCP servers is very, very exciting, and we are about to release ours, which is going to pull in every local, state, federal, and regulatory agency meeting. We transcribe all of them. It will have context of all of them and be able to answer and digest any questions. So say you're in Copilot or in Claude, I could just say now, wait, what happened at the PUC meeting today? Or what happened to do with CenterPoint in the entire country today? Tell me. And it's going to be able to give you more of a digest. And if you're in the car, you can just speak to it. It's so exciting. So I'm so excited about that.
Congratulations. That's a big milestone.
Thank you. That and the legislation, of course. But having the exact version, like you said, with accuracy. Some of these AI models are only so accurate when it comes to some of this data set they can't access, like moving live legislation.
That's right.
So having the real-time version is always important. But there's so much cool tech going on. Good to hear you using like AI so much, and lots of people are. But that was actually one of my questions: is the tech companies do build on 18-month timeline for some of these things, but the grid infrastructure moves at a decade timeline. So what are the policy gaps there that you're looking to fix to speed that up a little?
So I think we'll speak first to some things that have been done. So as the transmission distribution utility down in Houston, I've focused mostly on our ability to build that infrastructure. And the legislature a couple sessions ago really reduced the timeline for building new transmission lines.
Okay.
And it doesn't mean that you do any less landowner engagement, and that we don't do any less studying of alternatives to a particular transmission line. Just means that once that process has gone through all of those early stages, as it relates to the government picking the route for the line, it's a lot quicker. So think of it the equivalent of a permit. So instead of a permit taking a year, which is what the prior process was, it's now down to 6 months. Doesn't mean that there's any less due process in that that permitting proceeding. It actually gets you to a decision quicker, which is generally cheaper for everybody. So if you think about landowners that may have hired their own legal counsel or consultants to help them articulate why a transmission line should go here or there, or potentially nowhere if there's not a clear need for the line. The fact that you'd pay those people for only 6 months instead of a year, it's going to be cheaper. And so anyway, I think the legislature was wise to really anticipate the moment that we're in. There's not another state in the country that can build large transmission assets quicker than the state of Texas. And I don't think anybody would tell you that the process is broken now that it's going quicker, right? Wow. It's able to meet the demands of the moment. I think that generally, again, if you compare Texas to other states, we are able to deal with local issues and resolve them collaboratively relatively fast. So infrastructure projects in other states that end up in significant local opposition, local permitting, where the project just goes to die. We don't see that happening in this state. Part of it is because we understand the economic development benefits that building this new infrastructure will enable. We just have to do it in a smart way that takes all public feedback into account, right? And as long as we do all of those things, I think we'll continue to be successful. These, going back to data centers, these data centers will build the next schools, the next hospitals, the next fire stations through the tax revenue that they generate.
Right.
My infrastructure, I pay property taxes there too. So the more infrastructure I build, I'm not only able to allow those customers to come online and create jobs, create tax base that the community will benefit from. I also am paying taxes on that. I'm building the next school, the next fire station, and all that stuff, right? And at the same time, we're working to make sure that we're able to reduce costs to customers that are paying costs of the grid today by adding more customers to it. The grid is largely made up of fixed costs. And so if you can spread fixed costs across more customers, it will bring affordability benefits to everyone, right? And that's maybe another thing that we're not talking about as much, as inflation has caused prices to go up on lots of things. What I think this boom on the electric side is going to do is going to help mitigate costs to everybody else, right?
Absolutely. I heard that in the hearing just last week.
Yeah.
Meta is one of the largest taxpayers in the state, but also doesn't have any children going to school. So they're paying into that system, which is
That's right.
Which is cool.
That's right.
I have a question for you. I'm sure some people on the other end of this also want to know, but with ERCOT and PUC, can you break down what their role is in all of this and what the divide of responsibilities really is?
Yeah.
In simple English, if possible.
So I think it's a perfectly good question, because none of it's easy, and none of their jobs are easy. But maybe we can unpack it and try to easily explain it,
That would be
right?
great.
So think about the Public Utility Commission as the final decider on all policy that's been implemented by the legislature, all regulation, rulemaking that applies to the industry, right? They're the final stop in that process. The legislature then has the opportunity to change that policy, tweak the process, change the rules, right? And so when they come in session every couple of years, they have the opportunity to help shape what exists or to create something new that then the PUC will make rules around, implement, right? They're the final decision maker on it. So think about the PUC as kind of the head of all things electric in this state. With the legislature being able to tell the head of things, do more of that, less of that, a different that, right? And then think of ERCOT as essentially working for that head of electricity, that is the PUC. And they are doing a small part of what the PUC is responsible for. Not to minimize what ERCOT does, they have a huge job, right? But PUC has lots of things under their umbrella. ERCOT is a very specific thing that they have that reports into them, that develops the rules for the competitive market, changes those rules over time as customers want the market to be different. Literally every second of every day, dispatching the market, telling which generators to turn on to meet which customers' demand, and balancing that literally every second of every day. Financially clearing the market so that if you and I are participating in the wholesale electric market, buying or selling power, those transactions clear through ERCOT. So PUC has governing oversight of that because an agency can't do that every day and wrangle that many stakeholders to talk about what we want the competitive market to do. So that exists, under the PUC at ERCOT with a whole governing structure in place and a whole process that is very stakeholder driven to make sure that ERCOT at the end of the day is giving the market kind of what the market is demanding, while at the same time balancing the risks that are associated with running the grid every day. And so super important separate function that the PUC oversees that ERCOT does.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
that was really, really helpful.
Yeah.
If you have just, say, 1 hour with the Texas legislature, what would you talk to them about right now?
I think that in addition to some of the things that we've talked about in terms of, we're at this incredibly important moment in the history of our industry. Reminding what we've done as a state to set us up foundationally for success in this moment. And the importance to our communities of, if we get this right, how it will positively transform the communities that we have the privilege to serve, that they have the privilege to serve as their constituents. I think I'd love to unpack that just so that before we start diving into the things that we might need to tackle in the moment, because so many times we don't provide the context of how we got here. And then in the context of talking about that, there may be some changes that we need kind of on the margins to think about. We think about how do we finance all of this growth in the most efficient way possible so that we can keep our rates low. There's some inefficiencies built into the system that increase our borrowing costs. And I like to call those kind of hidden taxes, that if you could take those out of the system, it doesn't change the infrastructure I build, but it makes the infrastructure I build cheaper, by just removing some hidden taxes in the system, right? So I'd love to peel back on that a little bit. Not because they necessarily all need to be addressed at once, those things around the margins, but if we can start tackling some of them, you know, as we continue to see the need for me to move quicker, the need for me to increasingly enable customers of greater size to connect at the grid, I think I'll be more successful with some tweaks on the margin, that are super nerdy to talk about. But if you understand it in the context, make a lot of sense. People, I think, nod up and down more than they would nod side to side at the need to address those. So.
Well, we love the nerdy stuff.
Yeah,
a lot of this came up in the hearing last week. So someone brought up, and it was actually a constituent who had 6 days notice and a weekend to produce a $24 million or lose their spot in the queue, without any idea of what megawatt allocation they were going to get. Is this something that Texans are hearing more right now? Is this just a fluke?
Yeah, so I can't speak to that exact situation, so it didn't involve my company, but I can tell you that customers just want to understand the rules of the road. Mm-hmm. And surprises are never good.
Sure.
This, by the way, is not rocket science. This is how we live our lives every day, right? We just want to understand what does success for my project look like, and any surprise, especially in that order of magnitude, is unacceptable, right? So I think as we continue to move forward, whether it's the new batch process that is being looked at by ERCOT and PUC, or whether it's any legislative change, I think that customers just want to understand and have predictability in policy. And we can win this game if we understand what the rules of the game are, right? Is probably the mentality of most customers. And if you change the rules of the game on me or surprise me, right? And so I can appreciate where that sentiment is coming from. I think that part of the reason why Texas is so attractive as a state for business, and why the governor has won awards year after year, more than a decade now in a row, of being one of the top places to be for business, is because of predictable regulation. And we all have a role to play in that, right? Customers come to me as the utility to explain the process. I need to make sure that I'm explaining it in a way that is correct, and that doesn't surprise them, right? And so the state's done their part. Now it's time for the utilities to do their part and avoid those surprises, and make sure that our customers have predictable regulation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily your world, but now these overlap, and water came up a lot in that hearing. So we were talking about this just before, but I remember the legislature said that the data center uses about the same amount as a grocery store. I looked up, it's about 25 to 100 times more, but the PUC has sent kind of voluntary data surveys to people. Do you know why that's more voluntary?
I think it's helpful to get information from the customers. The Public Utility Commission regulates me as a business. They don't regulate Jason Ryan, right? They don't regulate you as a customer.
Sure.
And so it doesn't shock me that asking for information from customers is voluntary, right? So that they can get information to help them do the jobs that they're charged with doing. And I think that we're going to continue to see an evolution on how water is used or not used in the data center process. Just like they are enabling technology and advances, so too are they advancing the technology that they use. So you see more and more data centers get comfortable, for example, with parts of Senate Bill 6 from last session that in the moment you had a lot of companies kind of wringing their hands over some of the requirements in there. I think advances in their business model has allowed them to get comfortable with that. And I think advances in their business model and in technology will help address this water issue also. And so I'm excited to see how, 5 years from now, how we look back at the issues that we're talking about to see if they're even still an issue. Or have we figured out how to treat that issue very seriously. I'm not saying forget the issue, but to treat it seriously in a way that allows the business to also move forward. Because I bet when we look back 5 years from now and we talk about, well, what would we have done differently as it relates to data centers? I don't think it's going to be stuff that we're talking about today. I think those things will sort themselves out because as Texans, we take on big challenges and we figure it out. We don't let ourselves sit here in analysis paralysis and not move anything forward until we figure it out. And that's why companies want to expand here, come here for the first time, not just from other states, but from the entire world. And so I'm confident we'll be able to figure those things out.
That sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
What do you foresee happening in the next 5 years? What do you see the next big issues being in this space?
Everything is cyclical. I actually don't think that we are yet up the entire mountain of new users of electricity. And part of that is demand that we as individuals are creating. We like the next big technological thing that's enabled. And I think businesses are just now starting to harness what AI can do. So I wouldn't say, I'd be shocked if more than a couple businesses on the planet would say that they have exhausted their ability to do anything more with AI, right? That's just not where we're at. So I think you're going to continue to, I think you'll continue to see people get more comfortable with data centers as a thing. They've been around for decades, absolutely. And they weren't the boogeyman then. And I think we'll get over them being the boogeyman now. Sure. And we'll continue to rely on technology to enable our everyday lives and help pursue possibilities, whether that's cure for diseases or some next big business process that we haven't even thought of yet.
Oh, it's so exciting.
Yeah,
I can't predict where the tech will be, but I think the sentiment on it will change with efficiency and people using it more. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're dealing with some heavy stuff. I know a lot of our listeners are government affairs professionals and people in your world, but also some new in their careers. Yeah. So before you go, I want to kind of dig into some of that a little bit more and just some advice for the folks listening. You've worked in Fortune 500 companies. You've worked in legal law firms.
That's right.
So for you, what's the skill that mattered the most?
I think if you have the ability to really understand something, understand your client's business, ask questions as to why they want to pursue a particular policy or why a particular policy is bad for their business. Not in an aggressive way, but truly as if you approach things with a learning mindset, it will empower you as their government affairs representative to have a more meaningful conversation, to see a path forward when you might be dealing with an issue that has significant strong feelings on both sides, right? And oftentimes that's where we find ourselves. That's why companies hire us, is to navigate through the complicated stuff. If it was all easy, they wouldn't need lobbyists. Sure. And so I think the more you can understand, if I look back on my career it's been, heads down, work to understand the issue, work to understand the business, the why behind the what. And then that enables me to walk into a room, whether people are happy to see me or not, whether they want to address my issue or maybe completely on the other side of that issue. And I've often been surprised by a path that we can come up with that accomplishes most of what everybody is looking for. That if I didn't understand the business and why do we want this or why do we not want this, if you're just a mouthpiece for the people that actually understand the business, you can go really far, but you can't go as far, if that makes sense, right? You can provide some value, but not as much value as if you truly understood the issue and brought solutions to the table and not just problems to the table that need solving.
Great advice.
Yeah.
And you testified more than most, I would say. And sometimes, like you'd mentioned, if they're not happy to see you, how do you kind of respond in situations like that when you're testifying and it's tense?
Yeah. So I think this is true no matter what state you're in. I think this is true no matter what level of government you're having a conversation with. I've been to some very tense city council meetings. And I think if establishing and continuously building on trust, having a do-say ratio of 1, right? You say what you're going to do and you do what you say, and you repeatedly have that experience with the person that's in front of you. You may not agree with what they're saying, but you may listen a little bit more than you otherwise would if you trust them. So that obviously takes time, and there are periods of time where you're gonna have to really improve on that do-say ratio to keep it as close to 1 as you can. But that's I think a way to approach this business where so much of what we do is based on our word, is to continuously show how what you're saying is consistent with what the actions that they're seeing, right? And explain the deviations, because a lot of times it can be a simple conversation that needs to be had to explain why you might be seeing something different than what I said. And those are incredibly important to follow up on, right? So that if there's a perceived deviation, you can correct it, right? And I think we all have lessons where we've not done that. And it just really drives home the importance of doing that follow-up, constantly creating that trust and building on trust.
I love that, because it's, even with AI, it's going to help support, but can never do what you just described.
That's right.
Never. That cannot automate that in any way. You need trust, human connection, and being in person. So that's a good note to leave on, I would say. But Jason, it's been amazing having you on. You're so knowledgeable about your subjects and about CenterPoint and this area that's very tricky to unpack. So thank you so much for coming on. Any last thoughts or things you want to bring up or mention?
No, I think maybe the last thing I'll mention. So first, thank you for the opportunity to talk about some nerdy stuff.
Yes.
But I think the thing that I would leave folks, especially if they're new to either the energy space or to the government affairs space more broadly, is kind of continue to approach things with that learning mindset that we talked about. Understand as much as you can. And for those of you that may work in companies, really help shape the culture of that company by bringing that mindset, by speaking up when you have opinions. So many times a government affairs professional might feel in a room full of subject matter experts might not feel welcome or empowered or whatever the right word is that fits your situation, to challenge thoughts, to ask questions, to really understand. I had that experience when I first got involved with subject matter experts that knew more than I'm not an expert on anything. And so I would just encourage folks to really take advantage of subject matter experts, not just soak it all in, but have a conversation. Because the more you have a conversation, the more you're going to become a little bit more every time of a subject matter expert. And it's going to help you explain that why behind the what. It's going to help you do a better job. So I just encourage folks to take advantage of those opportunities when they come up.
I will continue to use that why behind the what all week now.
Yeah,
I'm
there
going
you
to
go.
be thinking about that. I love it. What a good way to start a week.
Yeah.
Thank you so much again, Jason.
Thank you for the time.
Yes.